Aleph. Pasuk Lamed Gimel. Ve'ato yere Paro ish novin v'chochom v'shiseu al erech Mitzrayim. So we just started talking about this pasuk, and last year I want to talk about the last few words here. Yosef told Paro, you need to place him on al erech Mitzrayim. This al erech Mitzrayim, this phrase, appears numerous times. We have it in pasuk Mem Gimel. Yosef was placed al kol erech Mitzrayim. Even before that, in pasuk Mem Aleph, and further on in pasuk Mem Hey, Vayetzi Yosef al erech Mitzrayim, and in the Kapitel Tehillim where it talks about Eidus B'Yosef somewhere B'Tzeisai al erech Mitzrayim. So this thing about going al erech Mitzrayim, however the right best way to translate that is. So, but there's a focus of being, a person being al erech Mitzrayim. And the pshat of that is because this is the crisis of the Oretz. Right? Because really Eretz Mitzrayim, not like land of Canaan, shouldn't have a hunger, and now it's facing this hunger. So it's something about the Oretz, meaning the nature of how the Oretz sustains inhabitants. Someone grows there. I forgot to give you the note if you want it. You know where it is, right? I forgot to take it in. The nature of how the Oretz operates, how the agriculture of the Oretz works, right? And now there's a new paradigm for the Oretz. Eretz Mitzrayim is not different than we thought of it until now, and therefore there has to be a new ruler, someone who's going to manage the new Eretz Mitzrayim. Why does it have to be a new person? Because Paro, the fact that Paro couldn't understand his dream indicates that Paro is not the person for the new Mitzrayim, right? Paro understands the old Mitzrayim, doesn't understand the new Mitzrayim. Can't make sense of his dreams, can't make sense of the impoverished state of the cows, right? So we need an Ish Novin V'Chochom who's now going to sort of be in the place of Paro al erech Mitzrayim. And furthermore, then once we see it that way, you see the story starts that Paro is Omed al Hayor, and now Paro is being sort of usurped. Okay, but you see there's a competition here, right? Who's really the ruler of Mitzrayim? Paro starts al Hayor, which is represents the whole might of Mitzrayim, is the Or, and being al Hayor represents the fact that the Or supports Mitzrayim by being Oila, which I think we discussed in the beginning of the Parsha. I'll show you something about that. So Paro is Omed al Hayor. In other words, that's when everything is right for Paro. He's al Hayor, is exactly what he wants to be, because the Or is going to be Oila, and the old Mitzrayim, the Yor is Oila by clockwork, without fail. And that's where Paro gets his might from, right? And then he's Omed al Hayor and something goes wrong. So we need a new person who's going to be, instead of Paro al Hayor, it's going to be Nishlam V'Chochom al the Oretz, right? Because the Or is no longer doing its role of being Oila and supporting Mitzrayim. The Or is not going to, if there's going to be a Rav Mitzrayim, means the Or is not going to overflow. So Mela we need, instead of Paro al Hayor, Nishlam V'Chochom on the Oretz. Now look at Omois. I want to show you what I meant about al Hayor, because the significance of the Or is that it's Oila. So let's see Omois Perek Ches. Omois Perek Ches, we're going to start for now from pasuk Dalid. I'm assuming we're going to see further on tonight, we'll look at the whole parak. But in Omois Perek Ches pasuk Dalid, it talks about those who lay in wait for the Evyon, and jumping to pasuk Vav, talks about buying an Evyon for Na'alayim, right? Which is an Omois Perek Beis. Pasuk Vav talks about the sins of Yisrael, that they sell the Evyon Bavor Na'alayim, and that's not fair for Av Yeshiv. Right? The Medrash understands it. It's clear from Omois. It's referring to the sale of Yosef, right? So the Aniyeh Aretz is Yosef, the Evian is Yosef, who they sell for shoes. Nishba Hashem b'goyin Yaakov meshkach l'netzach kol ma'aseim. So exactly how this ties into our parak, we'll get to that soon. But I wanted to point out that Pasuk Ches, it says for all these evils, to almost parak Ches Pasuk Ches, for these evils, the Aretz is going to be roiges. Aretz is going to get upset. But also ka'or kula, which ka'or means kaya'or. Actually, a bit say. So the river, the Aretz is going to be oila like the Or. Okay? What does that mean? It means the Yor is supposed to be oila. That's when the Yor functions properly, it's oila. And the Aretz is not supposed to be oila. And Amos is warning that the Aretz is supposed to be stable. It's not supposed to come up and flood. That under the wrong circumstances, the Aretz is going to become turbulent, like the Or, and it's going to be oila. Okay? So I'm just bringing out for that pasuk first this connection to our parasha. We'll explore that soon more, but also that the Or is oila, right? So Paro Emin Al Hayor, it's oila. And one other place where it's actually very clear is the end of Zechariah, where it talks about is the after on Sukkos, right? All the goyim who are going to come, if they don't come and do Sukkos, then v'loy aleihem yeh hageshem. And then in Perek Yudal pasuk Ches it says v'mishpachas Mitzrayim lo sa'al v'loy va'o v'loy aleihem. So v'loy aleihem what? So many of the Farshim say, Rashi, Parashim, and others, it doesn't rain in Mitzrayim, right? So v'loy aleihem means they won't experience their al, which is the Or being oila. So the Or, when it's doing its thing, is supposed to be oila. That's the Or is supposed to do. So the punishment of Mitzrayim is v'loy aleihem. They won't. What they're supposed to have the Al Hayor, right? Al Hayor is a place where the Or works. It's oila, and Mitzrayim doesn't deserve it. V'loy aleihem, they won't have that aliyah. So prior being oibed Al Hayor and then dreaming of a hunger is the kiyum of v'loy aleihem, right? The Or is not doing the job of being oila for him. And instead of Paro Emin Al Hayor, we have Ishnav B'chacham Al Haaretz. Okay, now what is the job of this Ishnav B'chacham? What's the function? What is the function of this Ishnav B'chacham? So it's not so clear. Meaning the next pasuk says Yaseh Paro starts again. Paro should be Yafkid Pekidim, should appoint people who are going to take care of the economy. This pasuk stands on its own. It says Yeir Paro Ishnav B'chacham. We should say that's right. Right? It doesn't say that he's supposed to do something, and the next pasuk starts anew. Paro should set up the system of the Pekidim. So this pasuk stands on its own, and it seems to be saying like this: look, Paro, you just had a dream. Great Paro just had a dream and you basically had no idea what's going on, and you dream of being Omen Al Hayor is a disaster. So you need a sort of replacement for your greatness, your administrative genius. You have to find an Ishnav B'chacham who's going to be Al Mitzrayim. So this is not about, in other words, Paro came face to face with the fact that there's a new paradigm. The new paradigm is Al Mitzrayim instead of Al Hayor. The Or is not working with its Aliyah. Let's see what we can get from the Or. Without the Or, right, in the years when the Or is not going to come through. So for that we need someone else, because Paro has demonstrated that he's not. This doesn't work for him. This is not his mahalach, right? His mahalach with the Or. So that's the first pasuk is saying. Okay? Now, just going back to that pasuk in Amos, and then we'll go back to the next pasuk here. In Amos it says, if you do the wrong things, then the Aretz is also going to be oila, like the Aretz, right? So here we have, just pointing at the parallel, here we have that there's the Aretz replaces the Or, and someone else replaces Paro, and Ishnav B'chacham, and their placement is instead of being Al Hayor, Al Aretz, and Amos warns that sometimes the Aretz could be oila. It's not a good thing, right? The Or is oila, it's a good thing. Aretz is oila. What does that mean? Things not work. Okay, just pointing that out, and then we'll see how that mamish has a connection to our parent. But so what happened so far? So what happened so far? Yosef told him, "You're not up to the task that of the coming years. You need to find someone, and his quality should be being at chachma, because you were lacking that. You're lacking understanding of this, and he's going to be Al Mitzrayim to deal with the fact that you were Al Hayor, and that ended in and a problem. It's a problem, something that couldn't be resolved, right? So we're going to have a shtab. Yasef Pari pasuk lamadalad. Yasef Pari, now he tells him what to do. It's not. The first pasuk was about a position. Now he tells him very specifically, not about a position, but what to do. The Yafkei Pekidim al haaretz. Okay, let's talk about the Yafkei Pekidim, and then we'll talk about the Chumash. The Yafkei Pekidim means you should make people give them jobs, right? Now this is not Yosef. Yosef is not a pocket, because Yosef was already a pocket a few times, right? The Yafkideu al Beisai. And also in the base, right? So Yosef already had his Pekidus. And now Yosef is freed. He was taken out of jail. He's taken out of his position of having duties. And he became a Moishel, a Shalit, an Av, an Adin. Right? I think I feel like I missed one. One of the expressions used for Yosef. No, that's right. Yosef was Shalit al Aretz. And Samani la of the Pari, la Moishel, right? So Yosef is no longer, he doesn't take orders anymore, he gives orders, right? And the Pasuk in Tehillim, that Mizmah says, Hasiroisi Yosef al Shechmai. So in other words, he's coming out of his position of being in the base of Sayar, and his servitude was that he no longer works. He no longer has that Sevel that was expressed by his experience in the house of the Tzar Tavachim. The Mishra, right? So he's certainly not the pocket, because that was his job. He had Pekidus. Now he gives orders, doesn't take orders. So there's an ish in the last pasuk. Someone who's going to get a position, right? Position is Ala Tzrayim, and of course Yosef is going to fill that. And then there's going to be these underlings, the Pekidim, who are going to have actual tasks, right? Not just brain tasks, not just Ishnad Chacham is going to think. The Pekidim are going to do some work, which we'll see soon what exactly the work they do. I just want to point out that Yosef, whose Shechem is removed from Sevel and Malacha, when he becomes Mishnah or something like that, is perhaps paralleled in Yerovam, because Yerovam in Perek Yud Aleph in Malachim Aleph it says in Malachim Aleph Perek Yud Aleph it says Va'ish Yerovam Gibor Choyel Vayashlim Es Hanar Ki Oisem Malacha Hu Vayafkein Oisa L'Chol Sevel Beis Yosef. So Yosef Hatzi Yosim Yisevel Shechmoi, right? And he went out Al Eretz Mitzrayim. He went out Al Eretz Mitzrayim. Yeravam became king in Shechem, and his training was that he was Oisem Malacha, and he had a Pekidus, and he was Sevel, right? Now, that might mean that's his training, and then he became king, and he no longer did Malacha, in which case it's just like Yosef, who first did Malacha, and first had Sevel, right? And first had a Pekidus. I'm not sure, but just pointing at the parallel. Okay? The Yosef was a Pakid, he did Malacha, as the Pasuk says, right? Pasuk says, right? By the Sat al-Bachim. Keeps talking about the Malacha, right? I'm not dreaming it up. Right, last is Malachtoi. We went into the Bayis, last is Malachtoi. So Yosef has Malacha, he has Sevel, he's a Pakid, and then he loses all of that when he becomes king. Did you find the notebook? Okay, good. Weiter. Let's go to the next word in the pasuk. So this is Vayafked Amelech Pekidim. And what are they supposed to do? Well, I shouldn't say that because the pasuk next word is in the singular. V'chimesh. And he should or will Chimesh as Eretz Yisrael. So what does Chimesh mean? So I want to talk about maybe the less known pshat, which is Rashbam, Ibn Ezra, and Rambam brings this from his father's father, so Rambam's father says too. That the Chimesh means he's going to exact a tax of a Chomesh. Okay? So the Chimesh means he's going to take a fifth. And the idea is like this. The idea is that usually a king takes a tenth. Where do we get that from? The Mishpat HaMelech and Shmuel Aleph. Perek, yes. It says, Zarechem v'chamechem yasar. So the king will take a tenth of the zera and the kerem. And Yosef is saying like this. since there's a crisis ahead, so we're going to double the normal tax that goes to the king for the Sheva Shnei Hasava, and now it's going to be, instead of a 10% tax, it's going to be a 20% tax, and Tzur Hamor Shtel Su, that's the maximum, right? Amivazbiz, Alivazbiz, Esim Yichaymish. So Yosef is saying like this, look, because you can impoverish people, so the maximum you take is a fifth. So Yosef is saying that for the Sheva Shnei Hasava, we're going to double the take of the king. It's going to be a Chaimish instead of a Meiser, and that's going to protect us from the Shnei Rav there. Now, the pasuk makes it very clear that this is supposed to be a temporary tax. It's supposed to be temporary, but it turned into a permanent government program. Right? As these programs tend to do. And we find that in the end of Parashas Vayigash. End of Parashas Vayigash, with all the detailed description of how Yosef managed, micromanaged, the Mitzri economy. Right? And eventually he bought their fields. He sold them their fields. And Yosef gave them back their fields, and he told them, fine, but a fifth goes to Pare. Right? And the pasuk says, "Vayosem," this is the end of Vayigash, Perek Mem Zayin, pasuk Vav. Vayosem oiseg Yosef l'chayk ad hayom hazeh al adam astzayim l'far l'chaynesh. So what was originally set up as a temporary, one time, okay, for 7 years during the Shnei Hasava to prepare for the upcoming famine, set up as a one-time thing to be this double tax of 20%, ended up l'chayk ad hayom hazeh. So that's very interesting, right? That tells us something very important. The Yosef is not merely bailing out Mitzrayim or saving them from the hunger, but he's actually solidifying and empowering Pare, right? He's working for Pare. He's in Pare's employ. He's not just doing this altruistic, well, maybe it's altruistic, but he's not only, originally he sold it as, okay, a Kidim, and the Chumash for 7 years. But under his wise and understanding stewardship, he ended up utilizing this opportunity to increase the power of Pare, as it says in Vayigash, right? Okay, now I want you to turn back to Amos when you're ready. Okay, because I want to make a point, because here we see that, we see that Yosef originally sold as being simply a means of preserving Mitzrayim and saving them from hunger, ended up being something a lot more, shall we say, questionable or disturbing. Because the Maisa, what he did was, the Etzem took advantage of the poverty of Mitzrayim. Correct? Took advantage of it. The impoverished state. Now I want to read Amos well. Now we have to read Amos well without skipping. Before we skipped, the reason why I skipped before is you'll see why very soon. So go to Perek Ches pasuk Dal. I want to read it inside. Shimu zois hashayafim evyoin v'lashbis aniyei. So the people who are out to get the evyoin, and they are going to stop the aniyei aretz. Okay, there's an expression of aniyei aretz which occurs numerous times. What's the question? Amos Perek Ches. You have it? So I want to start from pasuk Dal. We're going to go back to the beginning of the Perek. Pasuk Dal. Shimu zois hashayafim evyoin. Listen to those people who are out to get the evyoin. V'lashbis aniyei aretz. Okay. So you have people out to get the Aniyei Aretz. I want to comment on that expression Aniyei Aretz, which appears often in Tanakh, or Anvei Aretz, and Evyoin is Shaykh to Aretz, because that means like the Aretz is lowly, right? And the Ani is lowly. So the Aniyim, I think that's why, the Aniyim are called Aniyei Aretz, and always says, oh, there's going to be an Evyoin Ba'aretz, the left Evyoin B'Kerav Aretz. You find numerous psukim put together Evyoin or Aniyim with the Aretz. It's a lowly state, and the Aniyim don't have much, they don't build towers, right? So they're just connected to the earth, to sit there on the floor, like a homeless person sitting on the floor and begging, right? Okay, so how are these people out to get the Evyoin? So before we spoke about the fact that they sold them for shoes, that's Pasuk Vav, but now we're going to read Pasuk K. Lemar Masa Yavar Chodesh V'Nashpir Sheva Shabbos Chabar. They say, oh, let's wait. We can't wait for the time when we're going to start selling our grain. Why? What's going to happen then? So Ibn Ezra and Rashi learn, they're waiting for an opportune time to sell the grain when there's a hunger. When they could make a killing. Instead of selling freely what the price is, they want to wait till time where they can do price gouging or whatever exactly types is possible. Okay, but basically the point is they're taking advantage of the Evian. Why? Because they're what Chazal call them mafkei sharm. There's a word, but it's a different word, right? Mafkei sharm, but isn't it? Maybe they store it, waiting for. They don't make it available when it's needed because they're waiting for when there's a shortage, right? A famine. Liknos by kesef dalim, so they could use the kesef and buy the poor people. The Evian ba'avur na'alayim. So now look at this. This Evian ba'avur na'alayim was, of course, referring to Yosef being sold for shoes, and that's very clear. In the other time we had this expression, comparing Beis, as a Vav in Amos, it's very clearly referring to Michron by kesef tzaddik, selling him for kesef, okay? And that's the haftarah for Yeshiva, as we mentioned. And there refers then to Yehuda and Tamar. Good. But here it mixes together two things. Right? In Pasuk, back to back, almost back Pasuk Vav, they're trying to make a lot of money by selling the shever and the bar, which of course are words from Mayigash, from Mayiketz, right? Shever Mitzrayim, and they're out to get bar, and fills the kid in the bar, right? And why they're trying to make a killing from the shepherd and the bar? Because they want to buy the dal with kesef. They want to buy him, right?
Kesef or with bar?
No, they want to sell the bar with kesef, so they can take the kesef and buy the people, right? Which is basically what Yosef did. So what did Yosef do? Yosef made a tremendous killing for Pari. He did a He did a crazy thing. So what's happening is like this. Yosef is the one who's the Evian who sold Bavur Na'alayim. But then he does the same thing. He also takes advantage of the Aniyei Aretz. Right? His trauma, you want to say, how do you want to touch this? He internalizes trauma. No, but whatever. Let's just take the facts for now. There's two things that happen in the story. Yosef is taken advantage of and sold for Na'alayim. He's the poor guy who can't defend himself. And then he ends up taking advantage of the Aniyei Aretz who eat Tvua. And he basically owns them. And that's, I think, the point over here that he said, let's take a Chaimish for the Sheves Ne'asava. But he's an Ishnam B'chacham who's in the employ of Pare, right? And he's committed to Shleim Pare. Which means when he's telling Pare, before we even figure out what to do, since this is a brave new world we're facing here, which you're not used to, if you want it to work for you, you have to get an Ishnam B'chacham, which you say all the time, right? You're Pare, look how that worked out for you. So let's get a viceroy, a vice president, who's going to be Nabu Chacham, Ala Etzrayim, not Alayar. He's going to work for you. How's he going to work for you? Well, because here's what we're going to do. We're going to save Mitzrayim. But if you have the right guy in the right place, saving Mitzrayim could not just save Mitzrayim, but it could work out very well for you personally. We're going to sell it as saving Mitzrayim. And it's true, you save Mitzrayim, but if you save Mitzrayim, it's right. As someone once said, you can't let a crisis go to waste. Never let a good crisis go to waste. That's what Yosef is telling him. If you have the Ishnam V'chacham, then he's going to look out for you, right? So what I meant to say, basically, Yosef is trying to take advantage of the poor Mitzrayim. Well, first of all, who cares about that? But also, the point is he's working for Pare. This is all part of the fact that he's committed to Shlem Pare. If he's committed to Shlem Pare, then it means he's going to take every opportunity for Pare, or else he's going to, Pare's going to fire him for incompetence and off with his head and get someone else who could do a better job for Pare. So he's basically committing to working for Pare and doing everything best for Pare. But by doing that, right? So like Yeshaya took him to task, and like Micha took him to task, by committing to Shlem Pare, Yosef is becoming something part of what he was running away from, right? Or part of what he himself suffered. And that's an amazing thing in Amos. Chumash puts it together, right? You sell the Evan for now life. And then you say, let's stockpile the grain and let's wait for the hunger. And it's all the same thing. And what happens then? Right? So what happens then is that as Amos says, the Aretz is going to be Roikis, okay? Pasuk Ches, and the Aretz is going to come back to it. We'll get that in a minute. First I want to go back to the beginning of Parak Ches and Amos. The beginning of Parak Ches and Amos, as you remember, Amos was given a test, and he looked at a klov koyetz, a basket full of summer fruits. And Hashem asked him, "What do you see?" And he passed the test. He said he identified it correctly. He didn't say it's Ta'anim and Butnim and Shkedim. He said it's a klov koyetz. He said, "Oh, that's right. Boha kates. The end is nigh, and Hashem will no longer forgive." Right? He's not gonna look past the fact that what? That they're selling the Evyer and etc. Right? That's not done. So as we spoke about this in Vayeshev, and the brothers did not identify properly as being a klov koyetz, because had they identified it as being a klov koyetz, they would have taken the message of Boha kates, lo yisafay never loy, and they would not have sold the Evim Pavon. But as Amos says, Nishba Hashem b'gon Yaakov im eshkach l'netzach. Hashem doesn't forget, and therefore, even though it's vayishkachehu, vayhi miketz shmasayim yomim, the kates is still there. The kates of demanding justice for Yosef has to eventually come true, right? Okay, but now we have Yosef. Well, let's see what Yosef does. Will Yosef do the same sin as the brothers? Will he also take advantage of the poor? And he also does, because he commits the shlem parent. Right? So therefore, what does Amos say in Pasuk Ches? Let's read the Pasuk well. Ta'al zois like tirgaz ha'aretz v'aval k'yeshiva. Here you are taking advantage of the aniyei aretz. So don't you think the aretz is going to be upset about that? Va'alsa chayar kula v'nigru shav nishkak yom tzayim. The aretz is to start acting like the ar. The ar is supposed to be ayla. Because the R is supposed to be unstable. That's great when the R is unstable, because that way it comes up and it drops all the silt and the fertilizer, and it's wonderful, right? But the Aretz has to be respected. It wasn't mean to respect the Aretz, it means to respect the Haniyeh Aretz, respect the Shvalim, who are Shvalim like the Aretz, right? Then you could take the Aretz's produce, scrape the Aretz of its produce, and use it for your benefit, and even the bad years, well, the good years can balance out the bad years. But the price for that is you have to respect the arts, which means you have to respect the shiflas of Daniyah. If you want the arts to stay put, you want the arts to stay shuffle, right? You don't want the arts to be oile, then you have to respect those who are downtrodden on the arts. If you don't do that, then the arts is going to demand, it's going to be oile, it's going to be roiges on the fact that it was abused. And the arts is going to be oile like the yar. So basically, Yosef's whole plan, since the R is not being Oila, instead is to be someone al ha'aretz. But that al ha'aretz suggests that maybe the aretz is going to be Oila, right? Because why is someone al ha'yar? Because the aretz the Oila. So then by saying let's have someone who's al ha'aretz, he's basically opening the door for Amos jumps and says, haha, you are setting up for the aretz Mitzrayim to be Oila, which is not good. Because you need the aretz to stay right where it is. And but the thing is, what you're doing is you're also not taking the message of the klov koyetz and blockades and like certain things Hashem doesn't let to happen. And if you make those things happen, the same thing happened to you, you're taking advantage of and abuse. You're not doing the same thing, but you're just doing that in Mitzrayim, and then Mitzrayim's aretz is going to be
against whom?
Okay, against Mitzrayim. Against Mitzrayim. Right.
Eretz side is going to be Oila against.
Well, if the aretz is Oila, right? What that means is that just like I don't know what that means. It just means upheaval, right? And I mean, you need the aretz to stay low, to grow things. I don't know if it starts just churning. I don't know even what that means.
You're suggesting there's going to be a rebellion, or
I think it's right, something like that. Yeah. One question didn't happen. Well, I don't know. The aretz turned into Keenan. I mean, whatever. Bad things happen. Not the Bnei Yisrael, no, the Makis. As Mitzrayim ended up. No, as Mitzrayim. The Arab became Chol as Mitzrayim. Why is that? Why is that?
The claim is that Paro took advantage of the people.
Right.
Therefore, he was punished. The
right.
people were punished.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. I don't know if that's... Yeah, that doesn't bother me. I mean, because the point is just that it's a dysfunctional aretz, where the king is... Right? Melech b'mishpat yamid aretz. I mean, if the king is dysfunctional, that means the whole society is dysfunctional. It's not so much that there's like a sin that has to be, perpetrated against them that he has to get punished for. It indicates that the whole Mitzrayim is rotten. Right? As a system. Mitzrayim is rotten. I want to add with one thing. This is speculative, but let's just say it. Yosef said v'yafkid pekidim, right? And let's take a look at the pasuk in Yeshaya. Yeshaya Perek Chof Zayin. Yeshaya Chof Zayin. I don't have to remind you how much we've been talking about this Perek, right? It's after of Shmais, Aboim Yashish Yaakov, and before that it talks about the Shalom, the true Shalom, there's the Shalom of Hashem, and there's the Shalom of Mitzrayim, which is not really Shalom, that's later in Yeshaya. Okay? And there it says in Yeshaya the following. Let the kotzir dry up, right? Yeshaya Perek Chof Zayin Pasuk Yud Aleph. Let the kotzir of the bad guys break, right? And those who don't let that happen are like ambinos. We spoke about that. Ein nava in b'chacham. Yosef should have let Mitzrayim fall apart. On that day, Hashem is going to beat out the grain. So Bnei Yisrael here is Mimshal to grain. In other words, let the grain of Mitzrayim crack, break, and you are the bar, right? That Hashem wants to collect la'achad echad. Okay, so we're shifting over here. In other words, instead of talking about food, now Klal Yisrael is the bar. So if you look at Amos Perek Ches, after talking about how all these awful things people are doing, it says Hine Yamim Bayim, and it's not going to be Rav L'Lechem, it's Rav L'Shmed V'Hashem, right? So meaning like this. So who's the lechem then? If the Rav is not really about lechem, it's really about the Dvar Hashem. So the people who have the davar, they're the lechem. I mean, the bearers of the davar. So that's the one we want to really collect. In other words, when we're so worried about lechem in Mitzrayim, all these dreams and so on and so forth, what do we really care about? Says Amos. You think we care about bread? So you're going to say, oh, bread is great. We can use the avyonim for bread. Yeah, if all you care about is bread, then great. But what if the bread really stands for Dvar Hashem? Right, that's basically what Amos says. Like, okay, you're taking advantage of the poor. Guess what? There's going to be a hunger that there's no way you could deal with. Mm-hmm. Because if you're hungry with Dvar Hashem, then you could be the biggest gangster in the world. And it's not going to help you. That's the bigger gangster are the more of a problem with that. Because the hunger is that you realize that if you don't eat Dvar Hashem, you starve to death. Right? So the point is like this. So the point is, so here we have a hunger Mitzrayim. We're worried about how to preserve Mitzrayim and maybe even to make a couple of bucks on the side, right? But the true hunger, the true lechem, as Ami says, is the Dvar Hashem, right? So, and that's what Yeshaya is saying. Va'atem to look to echad echad. Who do we really have to collect, right? Who do we have to really collect? Is Bnei Yisrael. So perhaps the vayafkei pekidim is a misplaced pakah pekadati eschem. That's asadachem Mitzrayim, right? Because the real pakah pekida has to be malakit b'nei Yisrael la'achad echad. That's the pekid that we need. Don't let the Dvar Hashem or b'nei Yisrael be trapped in Mitzrayim. Make sure to collect those. That's the pakah pekadati which Yosef Bensi says, of course. Pakah yifked l'kimenstem. But this is a little bit of a misplaced. He's still focused on the wrong thing. He's focused on the lechem to the exclusion of the Dvar Hashem, which is what we really should be looking for. With this we end on this Rosh of, and thank you very much. Take a break till Rosh Chodesh Elul or Chodesh Elul. Looking forward to resuming.